Hello scholars, today I will be teaching you how to add and subtract fractions. Now we're just going to do an example with adding fractions, but subtracting fractions follows the same rules, and I will show you that later on in the notes. So I'm going to use three colors. You don't have to use these same three colors, but I'm going to use three: black, orange, and green, for those that like to color code their notes just like me. The first step when adding or subtracting fractions is to convert from a mixed number to an improper fraction. That's our very first step. If you don't remember how to do that, remember I gave you 2 journal pages prior to this one on how to do that. Okay, so once you've converted, well, first let's have an example. This is going to be our example: 3 2/3 plus 5 3/4. Well, when converting, just a quick reminder, you multiply the whole number in the denominator, and then you add the numerator, which gives us 11 for the first fraction. And then for the second fraction, you want to do the same thing, multiply. 5 times 4 is 20. Add the numerator, which is 23. So now you have your improper fractions, but I don't have denominators. Well, if you remember, the denominator always stays the same. So on the first fraction, the denominator was 3. Second fraction, the denominator is 4. So now I have just converted from mixed to improper. Alright. So our second step, if you notice, I'm doing all the instructions in black. So our next step will be to find a common denominator. And I'm going to do that using the least common multiple. That's what LCM stands for, least common multiple. So I'm going to take my 2 fractions that I changed from mixed to improper, which is 11/3 and 23/4. I want to look at those denominators. I have a denominator of 3 and I have a denominator of 4. And so what I want to do is I want to list my multiples, because that's what least common multiple means. You list your multiples and then you find the smallest multiple that they have in common. Yes, they will have multiple numbers in common, but you always want to use the smallest one. So multiples of 3: 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. I think I can stop about there. 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And so I already see a number that they have in common, and that number is 12. So this is going to be our least common multiple. So we want to change that denominator to 12. Well, we can do that, but whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So that's going to be our next one. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. Well, on our first fraction, we started with 11/3, and we want to change that fraction to where it has a denominator of 12. And then our second fraction was 23/4, and we want to change that to where it has a denominator of 12. Well, how do we do that? If you look here in the 3 section, it took 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers to get to 12. Or we just multiply times 4. And whatever we did to the bottom, we have to do to the top. So 11 times 4 is 44. Same thing with this fraction. I try to figure out, well, how do I get from 4 to 12? I can only multiply or divide. But of course, I'm going from the smaller to the bigger, so I'm going to multiply. And if I don't know that, then I can just count. It took me 1, 2, 3 numbers to get to 12. So what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And 23 times 3 is 69. For our next step, this is where we actually get into adding and subtracting. So your step is you want to subtract or add. Subtract or add the numerators. You only want to subtract. In this case, we're going to add because that's what our problem is. Always remember, the denominators stay the same. Alright, so what does that look like? We have 44 over 12, which is our new fraction for our common denominator, and we're going to add the 69 over 12. Remember, the denominator stays the same, so I can just write that. And if I add 44 and 69, it's going to be 113. But oh my gosh, this can't be our last step, because one thing that we don't leave fractions as is an improper fraction. This is improper. So our last step is, if it's improper, convert to a mixed number.
Ms. Lee Young, if you're in the building, please report to the main office. Ms. Lee Young.
So if you remember on the last page, we divide in order to do that. So 113 is going to be inside my house. 12 is outside the house. And I'm going to divide 12 into 113, which is going to be 9 times. 9 times 12 is 108 with 5 left over. So now it's just a matter of which one is which. So your 9, if you remember on the other page, is your whole number. The 12 is your denominator. And the 5 is your numerator. So your answer is 9 and 5.